Hey, I wanted to keep going with the story of my backstory. We can talk about that this week in the emails. Learn about my backstory. More importantly, learning about your backstory. And the whole process is not complete if I don't tell you the story about how I almost completely ditched becoming a spiritual director as I was moving out of full-time pastoral ministry, because I was literally about 30 seconds away from dumping the entire thing. And this is what happened. In 2010, I found that program that I've been writing about. It was offered through Lipscomb University about learning historical spiritual direction and learning how to lead others in the process. And I was initially very tentative about it, but as I found out more and more about the program, I thought, this seems like it is exactly the thing I should be doing. They had scheduled it for a week in the summer, and it was going to be one of those things where we were actually going to be at the Scarrett Bennett Center here in Nashville, which is a wonderful retreat center. And then somewhere in the spring, they had to move it because of other things that were occurring at the Scarrett Bennett Center. And I knew that. I had received the information, but somehow had managed to not put it into my calendar. So, thinking that I had one more week before I was going to be taking a few days off to go begin this coursework, I get a call on a Monday morning from Frank, who's the head of the program, saying, hey, we started this morning. We're hoping you're still planning on joining us. And I'm like, it's next week. And he said, no, we started today. Remember, we had to move the dates for the program. Now, I'm 52. I have never in my life before then and have never since then managed to screw up an entire week of activities. But I did. And so I had to make a quick decision. So I called Ms. out of my league, and I said, I screwed this up. I said, is there any way I can move an entire week's full of activities, including being a dad, taking care of other responsibilities and everything, and so I can get to this beginning of this class? And so she helped me make it happen, and it took all day. And several times during the day, particularly I remember right as I got at the end, before I was throwing stuff in a suitcase to take off because we were staying at the retreat center, I said, you know what, it's not worth it. It's not worth having to move an entire week of my life and my family's life to try to get this done. But I did it. And so I pull up at Scarrett Bennett Center, I get myself checked in, and I walk up into the room, and there are all these folks sitting in a big half circle, and find out that they've been sharing their story about how they got to this point where they wanted to begin to learn to train as spiritual directors. So I walk in, and I'm literally the very last one. The person before me has just finished sharing her story, so I'm super frazzled. I'm angry at myself for blowing something that big schedule-wise. I sit down, and what happens is the very first thing I'm asked is, Bill, what brought you here? What made you decide you want to do this spiritual direction training? Like I've talked about in the emails, I was running on fumes, spiritually, emotionally, at that point. In fact, I'm not even sure I had very many fumes left to run on. So the very first thing I had to do was to sit down and begin to share my story with this group of people I'd never met before. Now, the wonderful thing about that whole process is it caught me so off guard that I just went ahead and told the whole truth about what was going on with me. Now, I try to tell the truth all the time, but there's a difference between telling the truth and telling the entire truth. But fortunately enough, it was the right time, the right rough circumstances on that Monday, and the right group of people that I just shared my story. Now, what I found in that group of people was a very eclectic, interesting, intelligent, intuitive, this wonderful group of people, engineers and nurses and homemakers and pastors' wives and pastors, and they're just people that were dealing with this lifelong pull toward contemplative spirituality and helping other people. What I did in that really hectic, really internally troubling Monday, where I had literally screwed up an entire week of my life and my family's life, is I found my people. I'd found them before in ones and twos, but I'd never landed in a group of people that where I went, oh yeah, these are my people. People with a long background in 12-step recovery. People that were finding their own way in the world. People that had lived for decades feeling like they didn't quite fit in their environments. They were tremendous contributors, but they knew it just wasn't quite a fit. And yet here we all were together, learning from a couple of great professors, Jackie Halstead and Randy Harris, and beginning this journey to learn all of these historical processes to fill in the blanks that just come from studying on your own. And so I share that story to encourage you in two ways. First, I know that it is hard to take those steps. I've written before about how hard it was to make the phone call to meet with the first guy that served me as a spiritual director, because I was just flying blind. I share the story about how rough it was even just to go into my own program, because there's always resistance. It comes internally, it comes externally, but there's always resistance to saying yes to what you know your heart desires. And the other part I want to do is encourage you that even with the resistance and even with the difficulty sometimes of saying yes, that there is the real possibility of finding your people, finding people who think like you, who want the kind of things that you want, who have the same type of spiritual ambition, and I mean ambition in the best sense of the word, about how they want to be, who they want to grow into, and what they want their lives to look like, as well as how they want to serve other people in the future. And so I know a lot of you read these emails every day, and you're very, very interested, but you're also very hesitant. I just want to invite you into the pool. Try to create a zero-entry pool, that kind of pool where you just step right in and you only go as far as you need to, but you don't have to jump off a diving board. It doesn't have to be a big shock. You can come straight in. So, you know what I do? I offer an Abide course. I offer the ability to meet with me over Skype, and even if you're here in the Nashville area, we can meet person to person. I'll put links to all that stuff here in the email and in the Facebook Live that follows. But again, as I continue to talk about what led me to this place, and tomorrow I'll talk more about what I know about what led other people to join us here in terms of the Abide course and Red Backpack Spiritual Direction. I just want to encourage you that even though I know the resistance is real, you can do this, and that the water's really warm, and that we would love to have you join us. So again, this morning, I pass the peace of Christ to you, and thanks for listening. Talk to you again tomorrow.